So there's a lot of static in my maybe I need more lights. Let's see. I spent all day yesterday um realize or thinking it was the anniversary of the conception of my son and daughter, Elsa and Harlan, um and I realized this morning that it isn't the anniversary of their conception. Today is. And but when I woke up this morning, for whatever reason, there's always the battles that are going on, and I'm always um feeling the pressure of all the battles of all the lands, um, because I've been target. I'm trying to see my eyes because my eyes look like I'm full of you know what, but I'm not. Um, in other words, my eyes look brown instead of blue, but right, and when I get closer, they look blue. But um, I'm listening at the doors in the hallway, pointing that way, but the hallway's actually that way. um, the underworld battle and the above world battle. In other words, good against evil is always it's always stirring one way or the other. And um I woke up first not really contemplating, but giving my thought processes to what was first emerging in my mind, and that was the battle of the underworld. To me, it's the underworld because there seems to be no light. Um, and it starts with and this battle has been going on and playing itself out in real world politics. Like there's so many facets of what's going on in the world and around the world, including the stupid war between the Ukraine and Russia, um and what all is involved in that, and how none of what it really is about, because you start to wonder if those if those presidents even know what it's about. It's like they just get their bravado on and start fighting for other people's children and claiming other people's children, and women's eggs and pollen, and it just it is so absurd. Um, and I don't care what anybody else has to say about it. To fight for a flag is it's absurd with all the immigration around the world and all the infiltration within spying and all that stuff, international spying throughout history. to fight for a flag at this point, it's almost like, um, it's almost like who can really even, okay, uh, I could be born in Africa, and the assumption would be that I'm a black. Well, why is she black? I said to, or why isn't she black? Um, it, there's so much intermingling and cross pollination within the human race, that a flag, it really means nothing. Um, but anyway, um, I said to a black woman at one of the shelters I was at, just as my own little test, because certain populations of people have put us blonde hair, blue eyed people with lighter skin and straighter hair. They, uh, we blonde hair, blue eyed persons have been put under by the African American, Jamaican American, the darker complected, curly haired population, brown hair, brown eyes, have put us under a secret test again and again. A social, what did they call it? Uh, Whereby, but anyway, so I decided only one time to conduct my own social test. And it was a darker skinned lady at one of the shelters, and she actually resembled um, the woman who has been advertised on historical reports within the media. She resembled Idi Amin's wife, or one of Idi Amin's wives, and I can't remember which one, but or the name of the person. I remember which one by what she looked like. But this particular African woman, and she had a very thick African accent. And I said, just out of the blue, because I was experiencing uh, the race card, the pressure of the race card at the time, um, but not as anyway. I don't I don't know how to put, without going on a tangent again. Um, and I said to her, "Oh gosh, yeah, I have African children. My children are African." And her eyes got really big, and oh really? And then suddenly she engaged in conversation with me. Otherwise, she sat on the sofa across from me, very aloof, which is one of the things I've always been accused by said population, to be aloof. And I knew I never was. And I always felt really quizzical when someone called me, the word we used when I was in my late teens and early 20s, or expression was stuck up. And I wasn't stuck up. Um, I was uh, more well behaved. I had my higher moral standards than I even realized, than most of the people that I knew. And I'm not speaking about the people who were accusing me of being stuck up. I didn't even realize at that time where that accusation was coming from. And now I realize. But anyway, she was sitting across across the sofa from me, very aloof, much like Marcia James used to be. And Marcia James had an even more arrogant way of being, because Marcia was supposedly my friend, like an established friend that I had. Such a strange definition, uh, that she called herself my friend. Um, and possibly she was thinking the same thing of me, but I don't know. It was such a confusing thing. Uh, but not to go into that story either. I don't want to go on that tangent, although there was a representative of Marcia James in my path uh, recently. Um, the so when I said, "Oh yeah, well I have African children," and I was trying to engage in a friendly conversation with her. In other words, we were in a shelter, we were in a women's and children's shelter, and I was trying to uh, strike up a conversation, just a matter of fact, friendly conversation. I knew my motivations were innocent from the standpoint of I didn't have an ulterior motive other than trying to create a more friendly environment than what I was experiencing in that shelter. Excuse me, at the time. And that was a shelter in Maryland, and in Bel Air, Maryland. And so the African lady was being very aloof, but she was trying to play off her, didn't want to be bothered with this menial little end. If she was direct lineage, or lineage and wife uh, Idi Amin, um, I logically understand where her attitude was coming from, because she was seeing herself as African royalty, and I was just this little blonde-haired, blue-eyed white lady. Who is she to be talking to uh, one of the queens of Idi Amin? Um, and if I sound sarcastic, I'm not really being sarcastic. I'm being honest about what I experienced. And in retrospect, where I can only perceive, the only perspective I can have is that she felt like I personally was well below her status to be speaking to. Um, um, her status within African royalty, I'm saying. So then, when the conversation, and I was persisting, at the time, I didn't realize the likeness of her to this African queen of 1970s politics, which was continuing on because those politics never ended. You just didn't hear about it on the national news any longer. Um, the So I persisted to uh, to engage in conversation, friendly conversation, and finally it came up, and I don't. even remember her having children with her. I think she didn't. I don't know, but that might be beside the point. Anyway, so I began to talk about my children, and I said, "Oh, well, my children are African American." Oh, they are? Then suddenly she was ready to engage with me. And I said that without an African uh, accent, but her response was in because I don't want to engage in that very violent lineage. Um, um, so then she was like fully engaged in the conversation, and and then I was angry and I said, "Yeah, my children are white African American." And as though I had no right to claim that um categorization um for my own white children. Um and now here today, that would have been like 2014, so a decade later or thereabouts. I really don't. That part of the conversation was um, motivated, but the initial, from my standpoint, wasn't motivated or pre-calculated. Um, And even my response after that wasn't pre-calculated either. That was simply me engaging in like, oh gosh, she has this kind of a strange response to, suddenly she's ready to engage in conversation after I state that my children are African American. And then when I said white African American, she went back to what she was before. So there's constantly this, and, and I don't necessarily, I don't, I don't understand how our thinking and how we interpret things are almost completely opposite of each other. If I say something really very innocent and it comes back as and being interpreted as something disgusting, and I just don't understand. But um as I started to say here, and kind of on the original part of what the point I'm trying to make is that now here a decade later, and I'm not backpedaling as far as that conversation goes. I claim everything that I said, and to just say, and how absurd I think it is for anyone uh to get on bravado in regard to a flag, a national flag, I think is uh because there's nothing pure anymore. I mean, I guess there's still pure strains of different peoples. I imagine that there are, but I don't understand any longer at 60 years old or close to 60 years old, um, anyone's need to stand for a flag or nationality, because government is really I don't know. It's who can even, because of media involvement and the turn the table strategy and the deceit of uh so much. Who can even define a government? Who can define what any one person stands for anymore or believes in? If you elect a president or a whatever, a leader, and then the media is out because a person stands for and speaks about what they stand for as an individual, and then the media and everybody who loves the idea of battle and argument. There's a difference between debate and fight. There's a difference between sitting down and having a logical conversation and presenting your side of a comment or statement or theory, or hypothesis, or uh, there's a difference between that and fighting for something. Um, and when I wake up in the morning, I don't wait for the first battle I can run out on, and because it seems like that side's winning, or whatever somebody's motivation is. I and my Lord and Savior Jesus knows what I'm about, and whatever other people do is not really, it's my concern, but only how it affects me, uh, um, as an individual and my children. Um, so I uh, called this video MC, or drop the MC, which is interesting. I can't remember whether I called it drop the MC, uh, uh, capital M, lowercase c. But after I uh, allowed within my mind, I allowed the Akhenaten King Tut Egyptian Pharaoh battle, which is always playing in real time politics and arguments, whether people want to admit it or not. Some people know, and some people have been part of the undercurrent of not being aware enough to realize that that battle of those pharaohs is still playing itself in some people's lives, um, as an aware battle. Like, there are people from that lineage who use that era and those battles, perceived victories, possibly, as vehicles for their present day existence and their present day politics. Um, so after that sort of streamed through my psyche when I was first waking up this morning, then I started to realize, for whatever reason, I started to realize that, because then the battle of the the Scots and the Irish, because I believe I am of Irish descent from possibly way back to like the 13th century. Um, and then through the potato farmers that migrated to the United States. Um, and I say the potato farmers because the potato has become uh, uh, an important, and again, it was one of those things. Part of the part of agriculture uh, that was mentioned uh, in one of my high school history classes. I didn't take a sociology class when I was in high school. So within my history class, which was a required class for graduation, within my history class, the agriculture part, and for whatever reason, and what I didn't know or realize at that time, at my very young age of 17, was that um, um, how important agriculture is to land battles and the actual wars of days of old. And there was the Scots, the Scottish peoples and the Irish people were um, they were enemies. And but it's almost like it was a battle because the Irish were considered the lowly poor, um, and the Scottish were considered because they, were, I guess, the stronger. I don't know, but what I had been informed of more recently, um, as in the last few years, by someone who has a similar. I think they were of Irish descent also, even though his words, most of his words, it was an older man, and I'm not gonna, I can't remember his name, but for whatever reason, we got on the topic of the Scottish and the Irish. And I said, I still don't understand why they were at odds. And I can't even remember where. I think that information about the Irish and the Scottish came from my high school history class. So that's not something that played on my mind throughout my lifetime. Um, but more recently, uh, as in the past decade, it's sort of come to surface. And I think it has a lot to do with the family I grew up with. The male figure of my family claiming Scottish descent. Um, and the Scots had a stronger uh, presence within a more violent army than I think the Irish had. In other words, the Irish have never been considered a real threat as far as in war or in battle, to it seems any culture. Um, so this man mentioned to me, well, the reason that the Scots and the Irish were at odds was because the Queen of England uh, awarded consistently, and what era this would have been might have been pre-immigration of the Irish to the United States. I'm not certain because I haven't spent a lot of time thinking or researching uh, the era. However, what he told me was that the Queen of England had awarded all the contracts, like shipbuilding contracts to the Scots. So the Scots were able to make money. They had jobs. They had money paying jobs, whereas the Irish were kept at a lowly financial status, uh, seems purposefully. Um, and that seems to be playing through my in my lifetime, uh, in present day. Like I feel that pressure of oppression, whereby it's like even within my Henderson family growing up, I was always the one being held in a lowly status. Um and then to realize this morning, because I spend a lot of time watching like the History Channel and different stuff, and those types of shows, History Channel and the shows about the solar system and UFOs, and um, because I always feel more connected to uh extraneal, would that be the right word? Information. Like I'm always trying to get out of the box of politics, um, and the containment of lowly financial status, and in trying to get out of the oppression of being kept in a lowly financial status. It's not so much as me seeking money as me seeking um the awareness that I have to other information. Like I don't want to be involved. I've never been money driven. I have to actually focus and concentrate and purposefully be money driven, because of the requirements obviously of the world in which I reside. Um, so it's really a difficult, because as soon as I feel like it's almost like I want to shut myself down when I realize that money becomes an issue. Like I can't even, not an issue, but a goal. When it becomes my main goal, it's like, okay, I'm getting to that place that I see other people get to, and I don't want to be that type of person. Um, so anyway, within that Scottish versus Irish battle, which is really kind of an unexplored, commercialized, non-commercialized battle or whatever. I don't like to use the word battle because I don't like to engage in battle, but to stand up for my own people and and my children and realize that we have as much financial and have offered um and contributed to be deserving of equal financial status to uh, those who consider themselves to be above us because of financial status. Um, but in watching the History Channel, one of the people that I follow is I can't think of his last name now, Scott, and he goes around the United States e- exploring or researching, finding geological evidence of different battles and different myths or legends, different storylines that have passed throughout um, familial lineal connections, lineage stories of some of them famous stories, some of them not as famous stories. Um, the stones of now I can't even think of because my mind is being invaded with the violence of what's going on in the world today and of years of the past, because everybody wants their own story to be the forefront of everybody's mind, and everybody doesn't need everybody else's story to be in the forefront of our minds, because no one really wants to be taken over by someone else, particularly if their ideals or if their way of being isn't acceptable to us as individuals. And now us, US, is connected to a very violent movement. Um, but one of the things that Scott, I can't think of his last name. One of the things that he has explored and traveled outside the United States and and researched from a geological find um, is the secret society symbol of this. Is it this? And the Pope, and how this symbol, and this might even be the symbol that a specific gang uses, I don't know. But I realized this morning that this symbol, Charlotte used to use this, like when she was displaying through body language the representation of the number three. And Charlotte always had a very strong feeling about the Catholic Church. She was raised in the Catholic Church. She was, I forget what the word, she was kicked out of the Catholic Church because of divorce at some point, or her seeking out divorce. I forget what the word is, but and the whole thing, I even at the time, which was just before I moved uh, back to Colorado, because I believe I was born in Colorado. Um, Um, and so like the year before I moved back to Colorado in 1996, so like 1994, 1995, I had decided to go to RCIA classes as Charlotte was going to RCIA classes because she was required to for her reinstatement into the Catholic Church. And of course, keep in mind as I'm talking about this, I was still very naive about family politics, church politics, even you can say world politics and state. Yeah, most definitely you can say, because what I know now in comparison to what I knew then, it is like mind-blowingly different. Um, more more informed, and by well, I don't mean like it's I've been enlightened to all this good awareness of, because nothing that I've become aware of uh, is good. And when I was younger, and at this time that I was going and attending RCIA classes, I know in retrospect that Charlotte was much more aware of Catholic Church politics, and she was always, I don't say, oh, I shouldn't say always. She frequently stated the political strength of the Catholic Church. And even that I found quizzical, because I could I was like, and I probably even said to her, well, that's not really why we should be seeking out to become part of the Catholic Church or any church. Political strength and backing shouldn't be our motivation for being a part of the church. And I knew it wasn't mine, but it was something that I had decided that I wanted to join the woman who I knew as my biological mother, even though I don't believe Charlotte Henderson to be my biological mother any longer, and haven't for quite some many years now. Um, uh, so I'm just trying to identify and define the differences of our characters, even way back then, way before I had conscious realization to the point of what the things I realize today. Um, so the this symbol, what I came to realize within watching, and when those shows were first when they were actually filmed, like they're airing in my world today, these days. Um, when they were actually filmed might have been 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know. I don't have clarification of that part of the information. But what I have clarification of is that is a very prominent in within the Catholic Church, and has to do with the papacy. And and I think that it's a symbol that one of the gangs use. That part again, I can't be. I'm not. Uh, completely sure of. But anyway, one of the this Scott, I can't think of his last name, person had followed this on like not a completely surface level and not like really digging in deep, but um at sort of a mid-range as far as information coverage, information uh um brought forth. um and so he went into a little bit about like different statues of the popes, um and different paintings from centuries of old. Again, I don't want to identify because my memory is not, I've not ever been very good at memorizing. In this instance, really, to me, isn't trivial information. I would like to be able to remember the specifics as far as like what century this symbol started to be used and how it interplays with or interconflicts, uh, intra and interconflicts within the Catholic Church in regard to the Great Schism and uh, and what that symbol represents. And he went into a little bit about that it looked like the letter M. And and then I started thinking this morning, and I don't think that I'm making a stretch. I have to ask myself, and I would like to find the time um within the next year to be able to uh research this further. Um, but I woke up this morning thinking, MC, it always is, that seems to be. And I thought about this symbol and how that gentleman on that particular episode of that show talked about it uh representing the letter M at some point, and then I started thinking about MC and C representing the number 3 within the alphabet. If you apply very simple decoding, 1, 2, 3, ABC, and that very simple decoding or coding thereof brings forth a lot more information than one would think, because I myself never thought it, that applying numbers um, to the letters of the alphabet simply by way of their position, A being 1, B being 2, 3 being C, 4 and such and so on, and then doing the opposite from Z to A and applying 1 to the letter Z and 2 to the letter Y. I think that's um when, for whatever reason, I uh, started to do that as a decoding um, method, I was receiving a lot, very much information. Uh, like stories were coming up on the internet that were revealing, like, oddly enough, one of the biggest things had to do with stomach issues. Uh, and I don't want to go into that. That's posted on my Facebook page. That's probably a few years old, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't remember when I first. But the point of the matter is to realize that applying that decoding method, and applying the number 13 to the letter M and the number 3 to the letter C. Oh my gosh, that even more comes into and then to realize that today's world, the digital world of of computer technology, is all numbers based. And it's really pertinent and more valuable information the closer you are to the code and why it was first established, because this is code, and so what I just realized is within that, applying 13, the number 13 can be seen as the number 4 and 43, and today being the 16th anniversary of the conception of my children, Elsa and Harlan, Borta, Botha, and that I was pregnant. I was 42 and 43 when I gave birth. But the more sort of global issue in regard to the Scottish and the Irish battle, which is not one that is given much attention until Akhenaten and King Tut come into the scenario, which they do, but I'm not going to go into that, my awareness of how and why that is right now, because it's really a really deep topic. But to realize that symbol may very well stand for the letters MC, and then to realize that the Scots and the Irish seem to always have, because I remember trying to make when I was younger, for whatever, I didn't have a reason when I was younger to be trying to make that distinction. Like, MC, so is that Scottish or is that Irish? Because it seems like the Irish and the Scots, many surnames had that MC in front of their names. And then this morning I woke up and began to wonder, oh my gosh, was that possibly part of the Irish and the Scottish in like a psychological battle? I don't think it was. It wasn't part of the uh, goals sort of presented in conscious awareness. But I woke up this morning thinking, I wonder if that was part claiming the papacy, if that was part of the putting MC, in other words, it was the Scottish and the Irish battling for the claiming of the papacy, the position of the Pope. And it seems perfectly logical to me. Um, to 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 present that as a theory and a goal and concern of and within the battle of the Scots and the Irish. It's really kind of quite interesting to realize that, and the more I think about it, even as the morning has progressed, because I probably first uh, woke up at probably like an hour and a half ago, and so what I really wanted to do first thing this morning was find uh, Scott. Again, I can't think of his last name. Normally I know it, and that's how I know that I'm being psychologically attacked. I can feel it, for one, and the fact that I can't remember something that I know I've spent a lot of recent time uh within resourcing. He and his show have been a resource of information uh for a lot of things that I have been experiencing, and his show has actually answered a lot. It hasn't, given me any kind of backing or strength, because it's given me strength in as far as Christ Jesus needing and wanting the truth to come to surface about all the different battles, because the more people realize, hopefully, the more people are going to say, you know what, war and battle, this, it really is kind of an obsolete kind of way to engage, and to be able to stop all of the bravado and the mostly male, but obviously there are some female international leadership, and it seems to me like, as though it seems to me that the women who have uh claimed victory through leadership position, international leadership position, have really only done the same things that men have had. So what was the purpose of those women's what were they all about in the first place? You would think that a woman seeking out a political leadership is going to have a more female, feminine view of how thing, and like completely different. Like, yeah, sperming a bunch of different children all around the world, or sperming a bunch of eggs with different females of other national origins, gives that one male a lot of uh, strength in position of survival, depending on which way you look at it, because then he has to contend with the other men who are saying, "Well, wait a minute, I can do that same thing. I've got probably as many sperm as you, and I can." And then ensues battle and war, and then men seem to not seem to. I think I can confidently identify and define very many male goals of their motivation as to why they not only are they having fun, right, but they're 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 creating their own world of survival of themselves. It's really a very egotistical strategy from a male standpoint. And then I also see how those same men um have pit women against each other as a strategy for their own survival. Because then if women started to band together and say, you know what, I stand for my biological children, okay? I know that my visceral connection to my children does not end. Um, and my belief in my Lord and Savior Christ Jesus does not end. And any differences, I think that a child has a stronger connection as far as belief system, and men probably realize this also. As far as a belief and a belief system, a child has a stronger connection to their maternal uh, parents' belief system. And because men have realized that, they have taken on the strategy of pitting women against each other, and um, and cutting off the biological mother from their biological children in the best way that they have been possibly able to. So, as a biological mother, I myself can identify and see clearly more and more and more what I've been up against as and the strategies I've been up against throughout the centuries. Um, so I think that research. I pray Jesus continues to um, to bring forth the truth of this symbol. And the truth of the symbol might play itself out within somebody else's other individuals' lives. But for me, I know what it's identifying itself as within my existence and within my children's existence. And there's even a question as to whether it's played itself out as far as the Scots and the Irish, as to possibly Petrus having Scottish lineage, Scottish lineage that dates back to the original battle of the Scots and the Irish. I'm not talking about Scots and Irish today who, they're somebody that was born in Scotland today might have a completely different lineage or bloodline. I don't like to use that word because I'm talking about the bloodline and the lineage that dates back to the original battle of the Scots and the Irish from like the 16th century or even way back to the 13th century. Maybe when who knows? Because the gentleman that gave me that piece of information that I didn't have, that it's been a wonderment in the back of my mind from when, but not in the forefront until recently of my awareness. And I think there's not a lot of people who have any realization that there was a rivalry, I think is a better word, a rivalry between, but a serious rivalry between the Scots and the Irish. In other words, I don't know that there was ever an official war or battle. I think that the Scots always successfully held the Irish of the era, the original era that I'm speaking about. I think that the Scots have always held the Irish in oppression successfully without there being an official battle or war. Again, that piece of information I'm not really 100% certain of. In other words, there might have been, but to call it a rivalry, I'm more comfortable with the word rivalry. Of where that original rivalry took place, in what era. And I'm thinking like the 13th, or for some reason those two eras are coming to my mind, the 13th century and the 16th century. And again, that symbolization, and to ask myself, okay, does Petrus's lineage or bloodline date back to that as a Scotsman, and myself as an Irishman, which kind of caused us, he and I, battle that we didn't realize, because again, it's not a rivalry that's been considered to, I don't, but it may have very well have been. And I'm going to end it there, and I'm going to say happy conception to my biological aborted children, because Christ Jesus is our Lord and Savior, and it is an important day in my life, and the fact that my children were conceived on April Fool's Day. And I said to that Charlotte person very, very directly, my children may have been conceived on April Fool's Day, but my children are not fools. And I said that to her at a time when she and I were at odds, and still are, because she battles for my identity and all of my children's identities in a similar way to the way that my younger sister Leah does. And now there seems to be whereby I've experienced this I've gone through decades of being pit against my younger sister Leah. And again, that's something that I've identified that has taken place within our lineal connections to our origins um, throughout the centuries. And now it seems that whatever that my older sister Sandy and I are now being used as jealousy strategy. And again, if it's something that goes back lineally to my older sister Sandy and I's origins, I have to recognize it as not only a real time, but try to identify the origins of it myself, that I can possibly intellectually disengage from real time strategies, because I can recognize it more quickly than I recognized how my younger sister Leah seemed to be. There's different there's different character traits that each of us engages with or feels has a more natural, because it's a character trait that through the lineage and through the times has carried itself forward through our rebirth. And I know what mine is. And the table turning strategy always comes as an effective, as in more immediate victory, or more immediate. In other words, I could stand here and talk about my what I represent as a Christian, and then as soon as I start winning the thought processes that more lights and more epiphanies are reaching other people, then there's a big table turn. Oh, well, that was Sandy, or that was this person, or that wasn't her. She doesn't, and then comes into play my Irish descent of my Irish lineage, where I'm been held in a condition of oppression, intellectually, emotionally, and financially. Physically has been the most difficult way I've been able to be oppressed. Although, in my older years, I've had some injuries recently at the secret society of the Harvard and Yale ally ship of the secret society of the skulls can claim, or have claimed, and I can say just not justly, but in other words, I didn't deserve, but I know that they're behind my injuries, my physical injuries of the skateboard incident. Um, and so I have to be aware of their presence. And unfortunately, or they have a very strong presence in Boulder, Colorado, and evidently more of a presence than I had ever realized. In I think they've been mostly concentrated in Boulder, but their presence has been concentrated in Boulder for what I can trace back to at least the 1960s, um, which brings forth the honest identification of some allies that have had strongholds based based in Boulder, Colorado, which has some really kind of uh, scary realities. Considering different companies. I'm not certain what this one, and I'm certain I know that those listening and who are in tune to my existence know what organization I'm talking about. Anyway, and then there's that whole Henderson coal mine that's within the boundaries of my existence.